Welcome to another engaging podcast of SHOR, where we talk about Mandavians who has made a mark in the industry. Today, it's a pleasure, it's an immense pleasure, if I would say, to hosting an individual who has multifaceted experience and insights span across various industry, international markets, bringing to a table a rich blend of knowledge in new product development, digital and product marketing, and community building and brand consulting. A professional who has committed 16 years of remarkable experience in customer facing and B2B businesses. She is a distinguished entrepreneur, founder, and I would like to say the mastermind behind the Definer brands. She is part of a lovable 2008 batch, the first batch of IB program, and she is a flagship dual degree program from two prestigious universities, MDI from India and ESCP Europe School. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Siddhangana Karmakar. Welcome to the podcast, ma'am.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Well, we are very glad to have you today to the podcast. I had a pleasure in meeting you before, and it was a remarkable journey, I would like to say, and it was nothing short of inspiring. I want to understand a little more about the Definer brands and the brand company itself and about you. Could you share with our listeners how Definer brand stands out from the crowd and world of brand consultancy?
Definer brands, I started last year, I think in around March. It's a boutique brand strategy advisory company, and we basically work with founders and CEOs to enable them to understand their positioning in the market, or where is the growth potential for the business, and then help bring in some sort of frameworks and best practices so that the businesses can ultimately become brands in the long term. So our focus is mostly that you build some practices, frameworks, and bring some processes in place so that business can generate a lot of revenue and hence become brand in long term. So that's what we do. Mostly in India, when you think about brand strategy, brand consulting, it focuses in the area of the advertising side. Most companies which are existing now would be from the design side or the ad side, and they would work mostly in the communication space. This is slightly different how it operates in Europe and US, where brand strategy is a mix of both business and marketing, also design and all of this. So it's a mix almost in the space of design thinking. So that's the space that I am trying to build in for with Definer brands. Most of the challenge that I face when I am pitching to a new client is in trying to portray or make them understand what can I bring to the table, more than just a logo, more than design, more than just the colors. So that's the space that I'm operating in. It's not a very competitive space in that way, because there are not a lot of brand strategy consulting firms right now out of India. But because the concept itself is slightly different from what exists in India, so my work becomes a lot about knowledge sharing and making the CEO founder aware of how do I fit into their business and how we can enable brand building in general. So yeah, that's something that we can start off with, I think.
Well, I can see that it's kind of a very interesting space for branding and things like that. Yeah, maybe yes. Me being an IB student, I can see that Europe operates in terms of branding very differently from India operates. Yes, so I want to understand this. I have seen through a phrase which has very piqued my interest, I would say. Okay, the phrase goes like this: channeling the spark of optimism in business founders and leaders into strategy of business growth. Can you tell me what does this phrase exactly mean, and instances how Definer brand plays a role in this?
So I really feel that businessmen or entrepreneurs, they are big optimists in life. They would think of wild dreams and imagine that to be true, so that idea is, it sounds very jargonish, but most entrepreneurs and the ones who have vision to build a business, but they're not just doing trading, or they're not just doing jugad, or they're not just doing dhanda, all the words that we use typically in India. If they want to do something which changes the world for better, that's the space that generally entrepreneurs want to build. And that is the space where they want to build, where they'll have a vision. It sounds very crazy at this point of time. They'll want to change something drastically in human behavior or the way we are operating now. So that is what I term as spark of optimism. Like, you are so optimistic that sometimes you dream so wild, and you want to change the world and all of that. So that's where the spark of optimism term comes, and that's where after thinking a lot, how do I term it? This is how I termed the space that I want to work in. So basically, because I work with founder CEOs, I would do anything that helps them streamline or make the spark of optimism become easy to communicate, and then how to take it to life, action it.
Yeah, that is so true. So you can see as the code goes on, like the people who think can change the world, they really do. It's no example, better example than entrepreneurs who dream very wild and things like that. And it is true. I want to understand more about you have done from two prestigious schools and where was the transition happening to embark on this entrepreneur journey you took? So what motivated you and why this entrepreneur journey?
So my entrepreneurial journey is not something that I like very purposefully did. It was quite organic for me. Um, I don't even call myself entrepreneur, frankly, because so this is what happened. So when I started working, I realized that my salary doesn't motivate me, because like when you pass out from MDI, you already are or ACP, like wherever you are placed, you will already be at a certain salary, like, right? And if you are doing the right things, following the right directions coming from like whoever are your mentors, etc., then it's not very difficult to keep on doing salary jumps and getting the right kind of opportunities. So very early on in my career, I realized that's not something that motivates me. What motivates me is doing new stuff, discovering new things to do. I'm in general a very curious person, and right from school, I think I wanted to do work which is more creative in nature. Earlier, I used to think creativity means like how do you express yourself, like expression in terms of design or expression in terms of a painting, a piece of art, maybe. And all of this combined is very difficult to pass off in like in the corporate segment, right? You have the company has a vision and they want to get to somewhere, they want to increase their revenue, they want to increase their profitability, and obviously the employees or like the team members and the leadership, everybody has to work in a certain direction. And so obviously then now it's actually easier and we have more freedom to do a lot of crazy stuff and be an entrepreneur within an organization, which is typically called an entrepreneur. But when we passed out like in 2008, there were not a lot of startups and not a lot of space where you can like decide that you want to change your role quite often and start doing different things. And so I started my career as a product marketer. Most of my job was communication. Incidentally, I was in a company and a space where I could also very easily walk over and start talking to the product manager and decide that I want to do more than marketing. So generally, like slowly I switched from product marketing to product development. There I got to know about UX as early as 2008. UX is now like everybody says I know UX and I can do UX UI and all of that, but at that time there were hardly any people who knew what is UX and what is the role of it. So the point is that every time I do new things, I'll come across new things and I'll want to improve the way I'm doing things, or the way I'm executing a work, or the way I'm thinking. So that was a little difficult when you are in like corporate setup and especially non-startups. So very early on in 2012, when my personal loan for like education loan got over from studying and all of that, I decided I want to break free, basically. And so for me, entrepreneurship is almost like breaking free and being able to do what I want to do and explore things. And so, yeah, so that's how I got into entrepreneurship. I don't even call myself entrepreneur. Even today, I've done startups which are into product. I've done and now my startup is into service industry. And I do give advice and work with founders. Again, in NPD, it can be any space actually for running business properly. So it's mostly curiosity. It's not so much like I don't want to be bracketed as an entrepreneur either, because with entrepreneurship or being called an entrepreneur, you would also come with certain definitions and you'll be in a box. I don't like to be in a box. And that's why I decided that I want to be on my own boss. So let's say I am more like a learner than an entrepreneur. And this is the only way I can keep my learning like really steep. Yeah.
It's truly inspiring. Two things which I can understand is that taking control over your time was a priority. Maybe most of us, or I'm not really sure, most of us did not have the luxury to do it, but breaking free was something good, which I feel that getting a financial freedom or freedom towards having your own control of your time was kind of the motivating factor. But I would say I can understand journey was really inspiring, but it had its own challenges. Can you tell us what were the challenges you
Of
have to go
course.
through to embark this journey?
Yeah, so obviously it has always been challenging. Like if you don't want to follow the usual charted path that everybody is following, um, two things or two areas of challenges that I can bifurcate the challenges into. One is financial. I come from a very humble background. I didn't have like a lot of financial backing. Like I said, like I finished my loan. I had some in terms of like savings in my bank. I thought, okay, I can survive for let's say 2 years with this if I live frugally and I'm not a big spender, so it was easier for me. So that is one financial challenge. Second is, I think, your own ability to control your mindset, like or um, yeah, keep your confidence, like have confidence in yourself. That is also very difficult today because I've done this over a period of so I started entrepreneurship at 2012, and on and off I took jobs to financially support myself. So today it's maybe 11 years that I'm into this. So 10, 11 years, I can say, okay, it doesn't sound so difficult mentally, but at the moment when I was doing it, it wasn't easy. There were terrible lows when I would look at my own batchmates or peers I worked with. They are going up the ranks in, the corporate, and their salaries are increasing. They're going on holidays. They're having the so-called perfect life, and there are several times in my that stint of 10 years, 12 years when I'm like really low and I don't know if my career will again bounce back at all. So there have been a lot of challenges. I think the toughest challenge was in COVID 2020, 2021, when literally my so okay, so little I'll go back a bit. 2015 is when I last had a corporate job. Like I was working with one of MDI founded companies, Paperboat, and I was working on their new brands, which was for meant for kids, never launched. But we spent, like, me and my boss at that time and another consultant who actually inspired me to become what I am today. He's kind of a mentor for me today, even. So we were working together for starting something in the kids space for Paperboat. I was working on an app which would have worked for retention, and so we were so deep in it that when Paperboat investors decided that we don't want to launch a separate brand for it, we decided that we'll start our own thing. And my boss at that time, and he had worked for several years, and he was already financially probably much better than me. And but we still went for it. It flopped. Like in 9 months, I had to quit because I was not convinced about the product that we were developing. Then I started a e-store company where basically employees could buy co-branded products from my e-store, and it was running well in some few MNCs. At the same time, I think 2017, I got a bout of dengue. Like me and my husband, both of us got dengue, and we were in the ICU. And during like the lowest hours when I was hanging by a thread, I there was only one regret I had, that I have not become truly a painter or an artist in this life. So that was the time when I decided that even if I'm running a business, the moment I get out of the hospital, I'm going to action this. And so I started studying again, and I took courses from some online Canadian schools run by artists who were working in Pixar, Disney, and I learned the basics of how to get your better, like do better art, bring fluidity in art, how to do digital painting. And so 2017 to 19, I was working with a few publishing houses parallelly while running my company at that time. I was working with publishing houses as a illustrator. And so I would basically illustrate a lot of storybooks, etc., for children. So my life was like at a very high at that time, like 17, 19. I'm running a business at the side, which is operationally okay. I have team members who can manage all the operations. I just take care of the clients, any issues or any new marketing that needs to be done. And I'm also parallelly working with publishing houses. Things are getting published. I can see them on print. Uh, then 2018, I had my child, who's going to be 5 now. And so obviously I had to slow down. These the first few months of motherhood was not easy. I couldn't give a lot of time. And when you illustrate, you have to do hours and hours of sitting and working. And I was not able to turn around last minute changes and a lot of work, which my clients required me to do. So I had to take a step back in 2019 because I was not able to keep up anymore. So for me, 2020 was my year of coming back to everything which was there for me before I gave birth to my child. I was ready. March 2020, April 2020 was the time when I was looking forward that, he's grown a bit and this is my time. Like, let me again reconnect with the publishers and start doing a lot of business development. And bang, we had COVID. And because my business was so dependent on corporates, and the corporates were not turning up in the company, so that business had to it had to be shut down. Also, all the publishers who operate, like mostly publishers and the smaller publishers and children's publishers, operate at very low margins, etc. So they were not doing really well at that time. So no new like illustrators and artists were being entertained anymore. So, and very few like work was actually getting executed. So basically, both my areas of passion and my finance went into zero within 2 to 3 months. And then I had to rethink, what do I do now? Because I'm almost redundant in a corporate segment. And I was not hardcore doing marketing anymore, because I was like an entrepreneur. I was doing anything that a business requires. So I had to rethink, like, what do I do? That's when I actually, and like we were in between like the entire country being shut down. So nobody was recruiting, nobody was doing anything new. Everybody was just waiting for things to get better. Again, my college friend from MDI only, very close friend. We've always been in touch, and he's in Bangalore as well. So he told me, like, why don't you start working with an NGO instead of using your brain for thinking all the worst things that have happened? Why not focus on things which can, make your time utilization of your time seem worthwhile? So I started working with an NGO, and slowly I was back on track. My okay, my son is doing such wild things that I can't. So my confidence kind of came back, and that's when I started my consulting firm. So I started a consulting firm last year, but during COVID, the same friend who told me to join an NGO, he was already running a consulting firm in like investments, etc. So I decided, like, using his brand name, I launch like brand strategy consulting as my space of work. Uh, yeah, so that has been the most difficult story, and it's a very long story. Sorry for taking so much of the time, but that's been the deepest. But these kind of dips have occurred right from 2012 to, let's say, even now it can happen. Like, thankfully, I'm in a space right now where I do have like a pipeline of clients I've worked with over a year or more, and I know that they're going to stick with me, or I do have pipelines for getting more clients, and I know what I now work for, stand for. So my ability to, like, retain my business or grow my business is much easier. But yeah, like, no matter where I am and what stage of growth I am at, and because I work with so many founders, I know these things keep happening, and some of it is in your control and most of it is not in your control, like markets going down, things shutting down for whatever reason. And so, end of the day, like, if you really want to do this kind of a journey, you have to, like, start becoming very resilient and strong inside.
Yes. The story is not only inspiring. I'm a fan of David Goggins. So he says the struggles you go through defines everything what you do. So
Oh,
so
absolutely.
it just not only shaped you, you can confidently stand up in a crowd and tell about this. These are the incidents that shaped me and those things. So actually we are also very proud that you're part of our Mandavan community. I want to ask you one thing. When you are telling
Yeah.
people going rank up and you are standing there having doubts in your life, what was your coping mechanism at that time? Maybe today Siddhanka would have seen back and seen whether it all turned out right. But at that stage, what was your coping mechanism? What you told yourself to continue towards this journey?
Yeah. See, there are moments when you think, like, okay, they are earning so much, and now I don't care. But at that time, it used to happen. But uh, it's not like I was in depression or something. But like, my coping mechanism always has been that, my inspiration has always been in spaces of artwork, creative work. What next project do I do, which I can be really proud of myself? Uh, I think mostly that has been the coping mechanism. I've been also very lucky that I've always found people around me who share the same kind of, uh, I think, basic values, etc. And I've reached out to those people at different times. So my family has been supportive. I have, like, I also have like a mentor who's around 60. He stays in Bombay. I met him in the NGO that I spoke about, and he's been a crazy, crazy guy. He's a hippie basically, because he started as a doctor in Mumbai, went to, I think he went to Silicon Valley, um, saw engineers there and what they can do and how they have the power of changing things. So he went to Canada, took an engineering course, became an engineer from a doctor. Uh, then he decided that he wants to, I think, light up. Bihar, Orissa in India. So he came back and started like living in villages and lighting that up. And he kept doing back and forth like this. Then he moved, he understood that being a doctor or an engineer is one core thing that really, really like motivates him. And that's basically working with people and empowering people. So he moved from being an engineer to an HR personnel and worked with like very large companies as HR, and never trained as an HR. But yeah. So I think when I was at the lowest, I reached out to him, and because he has had that, very passionate. I want to do what motivates me, and I want to do things which make me happy or feel very fulfilled. I felt like he would understand the dilemmas that I. So I've also reached out to such people at different times. If I find these kind of people who I feel like understand me on my potential, have also done something similar, I would keep in touch with them, go back to them, ask for advice, reflect. So that more than coping, I think that's very important. If you are doing something different, like if you like an artist who's not trained as an artist, so you don't have that group of artists, which was again a challenge for me. Or if you're an entrepreneur, uh, anything which is slightly different from the normal corporate life, then you need that set of people around you who will just listen to you, not even give advice, or just share their experiences so that you can draw inspiration from them. Yeah, I think also because of that stint from 17 to 19, when I was deep into trying to be an artist, I was consuming a lot of life stories, books, also communicating over online communities with a lot of artists in India abroad. And I could see that people who are not like, especially in the space of creativity, their lives are never like the straight line. It's always up down, up down. So I had to like accept that this is what I am, and this is how I'm going to be. So uh, better be prepared. So yeah, these are probably the coping mechanisms that I realized work for me.
This advice I definitely think would be useful. Taking inspiration, I really believe that some people who's watching this podcast next time would inspire from your story and maybe take inspiration from your story. Well, now I want you to go on a different journey. So you have two prestigious colleges in Europe, MDI and ESCP. ESCP is one of the oldest business schools in Europe, and MDI is famous for its management schools in India. So can you tell us some instances where you felt this was very cherishing moment from MDI and ESCP? Can you share any one or two stories? Some cherishing moment?
Yeah. So the problem with our course is that it's half in India, half abroad, and you don't really get too much time in both the spaces. But I'll go one by one. So in MDI, I think the fun part was staying in a hostel and having your friends around you, and some activities, parties, something always happening. So you're like, apart from like, and you're an IB student, so you know the kind of exams that we used to have. Like, I don't know if it's still one per month. So the PGPM students would have, HR students would have like one exam per 2 months. We would have one per month. So we were literally always like giving exams. But within that also it was fun because you had to, like, you were living in a hostel, there's something or the other happening all the time. And I was sharing my room with not an IB student. I was sharing my room with a PGPM student, and she was so I joined right from graduation to MBA, and the person I was sharing the room with, she was a graduate. Then she graduated, then worked, then came to MBA, and she had lived most of her life in US, then coming. So like there was a lot that we could discuss on, and I was learning a lot from that whole experience of staying together. um, I think the uh, good or memory that I have of MDI is there used to be a marketing Illuminata, or something like that it
Yeah.
was called. Yeah, Illumina. So I think we were working for Asian Paints, and there was a concept decided, and if I'm not wrong, the hostel had a basement, and we were all gathered in the basement trying to figure out things. And so we decided for Asian Paints. We at that time Osama bin Laden was a character, and so because I was like one of those artists, and also I painted this 30 feet tall Osama bin Laden with a bucket of paint. And it was supposed to be in, like, we had this tent for Asian Paints, and it was supposed to stand up there like 30 feet, pouring the paint, whoever is coming inside. That was really fun because we used to go every night, like after classes, everything is over every evening. we would be in the basement, everybody's doing their part, and I'm always that, hands-on, doing things with everybody, that kind of a person. I think that more than the activity of it, and the whole experience was really fun, and that is the time I also got to know a lot of seniors. um, yeah, and I think I'm still in touch with a few seniors. Like, so I don't know if you still have that mentor mentee thing. When you come in, you will be assigned a mentor. So like, my mentor was, I think, the student Seki or somebody at that time. I'm still in touch. And like, now when I started doing this consulting thing, I also reached out to him, and he brought me into a MDI entrepreneurs group. um, like, I still talk to him. So yeah, so that remains as one of the good memories, where I got to know a lot of people. And also, I'm like always picked by anything that is creative in nature. So it was fun. And like, after, I think we spent some 7-10 days making that huge 30 feet thing. And it was not just me, right? I was just doing the drawing painting. It had to stand, and the backup and everything. When we started finally to put it up, it was not standing, it was coming down. So all that stress, right? And we were so young. It was like earth shattering, life is going to end here kind of moment, which sounds very funny now, because obviously it got resolved, and somebody came up with an idea, and it stood up, and I think we also won some award. uh, and it was like a group award, so it was a lot of fun. So that's one good memory from MDI. ESCP was very different. So I was in the I went to London, and we were three girls, lots of boys, but just three girls. So I don't know if MDI now or ESCP now like takes care of residential, like where do you go and put up. But at that time there was nothing, because we were the first batch. So life was adventure at every moment. Because, and thankfully, because I had already, like, I used to study in Delhi University. Before that, I had the habit of staying in paying guests and being by myself and doing things by myself. So it was not so panicky. But obviously a lot of us, like boys and girls, were doing it for the first time. So yeah, the panic now is really funny now, because when you think of it. Um, and it was a new city. I luckily got an internship there for 6 months. um, First time when I was financially independent, so I partied a lot. I think I partied the most at that time. So I think ASCP was really different. Like, it was like more about financial independence. Also meeting a lot of people from other countries, right? So I'm still like partially in touch with a lot of those people, and it kind of shaped my understanding of beyond India and beyond in, like, our culture. So yeah, that was the fun part of ESCP, I think, more than the college, because college is like 4 months for us. I don't know if it is longer for you.
Yeah, I'm happy to say that we still have mentor-mentee system and we still follow the same legacy. And yeah, we still do mentor our juniors and still have contact with the mentors who still guide us. So
Okay.
I'm very happy to say we are also, when hearing it from you, I kind of feel, you kind of feel when you have the same stories together, looking for the houses when you come to abroad, and it's kind of very happy and the same sad feeling.
Yeah.
Um, so, well, ESCP also has 4 months system same together.
Okay.
So now I want you to think about it. Let's take a hypothetical way. You get to meet a fresh graduate, Siddhanka yourself, graduating out of IB program. What is the one piece of advice you will give her at that time so that she can go through this journey?
Mm. So I frankly, I don't think I want to change anything, but maybe have more confidence in yourself is the only thing I would give. Like, if I could go back, I would tell my younger self, like, self, like the amount of self doubt that I had at every phase, I would ask my younger self to not have that self doubt. Because now I can connect all the dots of whatever I did and however I charted my path of career, life, everything. It kind of starts to add up.
Well, actually, I should really, really thank you for being very, very open and sharing us your invaluable perspective towards how your journey was, what shaped you, the struggles in entrepreneurship, and sharing with us what defined a brand does. I just have one last question. There are a lot of
Mm.
audiences from Mandarin who have come current batch, and they will find the story very, very inspiring. What is one piece of advice would you give them that you want to give them if you given a chance?
I think now, more than even when I passed out in 2008, career paths have become very difficult, because you don't know if the role that you're running after, or like starting off the session, right? You said like now people want to be more in product development and product management and not so much in marketing. It's a little shocking for me because for me, like marketing is the basic, and then everything stems out from there. Marketing is basically, forget about the term marketing. Like if you really know uh, what your consumer wants, you can empathize with the consumer and start from there. Then everything else is just jargon and terms. So my advice would be to not like run after trends, because trends are even more shorter than before. um, and roles are evolving, and the amount of knowledge that you require also like keeps on changing, and there's so much to consume and so much to do that it's better that you try to understand what motivates you, and how do you want to like live your footprint in this world. It's a little too heavy, um, but I think at the heart of hearts, if you like spend time thinking about what are the things that are most valuable, sort of ikigai, which is a common term now, like a common model now to think about life. Uh, it has worked for me. So what has worked for me is something that I can, and actually, it's better to not take somebody else's life as something that you want to lead. Like, don't look at this uh, big startup founder and think, oh, I want to be a founder. Uh, Rather, like strip it down to what you want to do and um, stick to it, or actually don't stick to it. Be dynamic, because the world is so dynamic now. uh, yeah, so what I would want to say is like don't fixate on things which are uh, like based on trends. uh, Hinge your things or pin your life purposes on more like core basic stuff of life, like what motivates you, what makes sense for the world, if you want to think in that bigger term. And I am a values driven person. I'm very boring. I'll say like think about how do you bring value to your family, to your the community that you're in, to the country that you're in, or the world itself. Like however you want to like leave your impression. I think that is more important. That adds up eventually in your career and life.
And thank you, thank you. We'll all like to keep that in mind while thinking about what our career trajectory and things will be. And I would like to thank you for being a wonderful guest for this evening. And last but not least, I would like to thank all our listeners. And please subscribe to our podcast for more conversation with leaders, visionaries, and entrepreneurs. More are in the pipeline. So stay tuned for it. Until next time, keep the show up.
Thank you so much.